of battery energy storage systems, and we deployed 26. And that was ranging from the small Instagrid style units that we saw earlier up to some 422 kilowatt hour 20-foot container batteries. And I suppose the takeaway from that is that there was no prior information to that event. So there was no data that we could look back on and go, well, you know, maybe we try this next year. Let's hope there's not a coronation anytime soon. But we had some really good successes. And I think one of the biggest successes was sort of using a large battery to peak shave off some existing venue power. So where we had a 63 amp power supply available, we knew looking at previous data from what was being used, it was going to be a catering area. They needed up to about 300 amps, but only for a couple of hours during the day. And we were able to use the 63 amp power supply to deliver those 300 amps for, you know, those hours that it was needed, without having to get a dirty diesel generator in. So it was really good.
Yeah, it was a monstrous project, wasn't it? It kind of ran. Certainly, we came in the first week, Smart Power, to install a 330 kilowatt hour battery system in the production area. Power Logistics did all the rest of the site, so the interesting bits. We put the battery system in, and one of the beauties, I think, of battery systems is their flexibility. So we were able to put the system in the first place in a reverse hybrid mode. So for the first 2 weeks, the battery provided the prime power. Generators ran for maybe 2 charge cycles a day. Then as we progressed and the build got more complicated and there were more people on site, we upped the charge input to 3 generators, 300 kVA generators, so theoretically 240 kilowatts deliverable. The charge cycles became slightly more frequent, but we kind of expected that, and we were still, you know, burning 50% less fuel than you would do in a business as usual model. And then at the very last minute, on Friday or Saturday, I think we were told that the big battery that was powering the production area also needed to power the mission critical broadcast suite and all the camera comms. So if the camera comms go down, that's a bit of a showstopper. And I didn't really want to get executed by the new king. So we put the system into peak shaving mode. We ensured that there was always enough energy to power that last 2 hours of the show from energy stored in the battery. And every time the state of charge dropped to where it was going to be close, a bit wobbly, the generators took over the load. So successes all round, and just major battery deployment at Windsor Castle, which was beautiful to see.
And I think it's important because batteries aren't always the right thing. I don't think. I think, you know, if you look at a New Year's Eve event and you needed some power on the middle of Westminster Bridge, you could put a fully charged battery there and it would last the evening. Or you could put a generator there, but you wouldn't necessarily do both. Because if you look at those, you know, the extra transport that might be involved, and also it's still surprising when looking at, you know, shouldn't we with a battery, the amount of events that don't know where every litre of diesel goes. You know, you've generated X amount of kilowatt hours. Oh, have we? You know, and you did that with X amount of litres of diesel. But the amount of people that don't understand or haven't got access to the information to say, well, essentially, I've had that much bang for my buck, you know, then you've got a target. Then the following year, you could put a battery storage system in and you might reduce the diesel burn. You might reduce the run hours, the noise emissions. But I think the information is important. Again, this is a project that no one had done before, so we had no prior information. But also, any prior information might suggest that a battery isn't the right solution all of the time.
And I think that's probably the case across the industry at the moment, is the, as Hannah alluded to earlier, do people trust batteries? Do people know when they should be using them? Do they cost more? Do they cost less? Just out of interest in the room, we have some event organisers in the room, don't we? Is there anyone here who has used batteries on an event? Good. Is there anyone here who's thinking about it but is nervous about it? Oh, just the one. Okay. You're going to have a couple of conversations. Oh, 2, 3, yeah. There's some conversations to have with these gents earlier, because I think it is that, it's having the confidence to step across and understand it. I mean, In terms of the scale of our UK festival industry, are there enough batteries and are there enough battery specialists to step it up next year?
I think at the moment we're seeing a change in the way that batteries are being deployed. There is a huge amount of units from, say, 2 kilowatt hours up to 100 kilowatt hours of energy storage available. They have a very specific role to play in battery world and in event world. I'd say they're more useful really for kind of like base load management, that kind of thing. Projects where there's an extended runtime, so particularly festival sites where you might have a 2-3 week build, a week of show, and maybe a week or 2 weeks of D-rig. The savings, the cumulative savings over a period like that from a small scale battery that is doing baseload management are excellent. But what we're seeing now, and what I would like to push for, is batteries being deployed as the primary power source on stages and in main structures. That requires a different beast altogether. That's the kind of batteries that Ian and I have just been talking about. It also requires, doesn't require, but it's ideal to have a main supply that you can plug that battery into. The main supply recharges the battery. If the main supply is not man enough for the load, the battery then peak shaves it and provides the additional power that you need, so you're not running an oversized generator for just 2 or 3 hours worth of power management a day. There is not enough batteries of that size currently in the UK.
Okay, so I think we're very limited on time here. This is a very quick sort of touch base in terms of decarbonising energy. So I'm going to sort of ask you a lovely little question here. You're going to thank me for this, Ian. Maybe, maybe you're not. I don't know. But for the room, for where we're sitting, so we as Tim says, there is a limited number of large batteries. There are lots of events out there. If you're an event organiser sitting in this room, what would you say would be your top 3 tips for decarbonising the energy on your outdoor event?
Work with your power provider.
With your power provider, yes. Decarbonising your energy, yeah.
Understanding what you're using. I slightly disagree in that if I was an event organiser and I had a main stage or I had a production compound that was in use for 3 weeks and you had a budget, put a battery on your production compound for 3 weeks because you'll see some savings there, hopefully. And you'll get the most benefit from it, whereas your stage might be in use for 2 nights. So actually, the cost of getting such a larger battery in and transported for 2 nights versus a smaller unit that might run your production without running a generator overnight, for example, think about that. It's all in the planning, I think. And there's not enough large, suitable units to do all of that stage work at the moment. But I think the reliability is getting better. And I think it's a trust, and the way they're set up, and it's building that trust, I think.
Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say if you're going to decarbonise your event, it's not all about the technology that you employ to power the event. It's something we've already spoken about. It's in the planning. You need to do robust power auditing. Ian mentioned that it's not always suitable to put a battery into a certain sort of power management scenario, and that's quite right. So you need to do very, very robust power audit prior to the show to A, deem whether a battery is suitable, and B, actually get the battery spec correct. That's the first thing you need to do. The bit in the middle is what kind of energy mix you use on site. Are you going to use batteries coupled with generators? Are you going to use mains? Are you going to be really mad and use hydrogen? Are you going to... sorry. I had to get that in there. What's your energy mix going to comprise of? Because to me, decarbonising an event involves using multiple different forms of power management. On the back of that, if you're not monitoring what you're doing on site, you don't have valid data to support your specs for the next year. So the planning and the monitoring piece are as big as the technology itself. Monitoring can be done through tools like the MISAP, power advancing can be done through tools like the MISAP tool. These guys do it pretty robustly. They have an understanding of diversity, simultaneity. They'll know what their fixtures are pulling. Monitoring, do my power estimates stack up against the data that I've got from my monitoring? If not, do I have to tweak those for next year? So it's a three-phase thing, excuse the pun. It's planning, it's power management, and it's monitoring.
I'll just about forgive that pun. Just about. Okay. We're very pushed on time here, so I'm going to ask whether anyone in the audience has any questions, because we've clearly got two very technically clever gentlemen on stage. Anyone got any questions regarding event power and batteries and their applications? You've nerded them out already. Yes, we have a question.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm from Future Sound Group. What's your estimate in how many years do you think there'll be battery packs that can run a whole festival? Because you said there's not enough at the moment. Talking about 30,000 cap upwards.
2 to 3 years, I think. It depend. I think if you were planning for a festival in 2026, let's say now, with the amount of products, I mean, a lot on display out here of varying sizes, and you got that energy mix that Tim mentioned, right? I think you could have a battery store at every power farm. And again, it depends how you set your festival up. It's all about, you might have had 2-3 generators all along a row of traders before. Well, actually, why don't you have one power station with one big battery and feed it from one power station rather than 3 individual ones? So with some planning, maybe sooner, but I don't know what you think on that, Tim, manufacturing-wise.
No, I mean, I agree on the on the time scale. However, I think the market penetration will be slower than that, because the existing products are currently, the weekly high rates are ridiculously expensive. I sat down with one of the guys from Greener, a Dutch battery company, and he told me what the higher rates were for the Greener units about 4 or 5 years ago. And I said, well, how did you work that out? And we did a back of a cigarette packet calculation, and he told me it was the equivalent cost of X number of X kVA generators and the fuel. And I did my little bit of maths, and I thought that didn't add up. But I think their weekly high rate's too high, and I think that will slow down the penetration because the price point isn't right. And we saw that in the early days with hybrids, with the smaller hybrid units, 20 or so years ago. It was an emerging product, the cost was high, the market wasn't saturated. That very quickly came down, and we had the added benefit of fuel prices going up, therefore the monetised fuel savings that you would make mitigated the higher cost of the batteries. But with the bigger units, I think that's going to be a much, much slower and more difficult process.
Yeah, I'd agree, I think.
Thanks very much, gents. I'm afraid we are pretty much out of time on our energy conversations today, but it sounds like that hybrid approach and measure, plan, and then look for where you can bring batteries in is going to be a really important part of decarbonising event power. And I know, Tim, you're working on with a group of industry experts in powerful thinking to hopefully publish some materials at the start of next year, aren't you?
Yep,
So
absolutely. We'll have an updated version of the Smart Energies for Festivals and Events report that we published, I think, back in 2017. We're going to make it a little bit more kind of current.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take the stage back because I'm going to invite John Ross. John, are you in the room? John's here. So we're going to finish. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you very much, Tim. That's absolutely marvellous.